And thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Ron Corning. Welcome to FWD DFW, together with the Dallas Morning News, as we help small businesses in this series of podcasts navigate the rough waters that have befallen them because of COVID-19 and this pandemic. We are joined today by Trey, who's going to join us in a moment to give us some tips on how we can get through this. Here's what we're going to talk about. Show me the money. Yes, there are many ways in which you can get the funding you need to survive this pandemic. We'll run down a list coming up. Get the yes. That's like having a good realtor and putting in that application for a house. Your application could get a yay or a nay. We'll give you some tips, and we'll do that by asking the expert. Isaac Elizondo is part of LiftFund. We'll tell you how he and that organization are helping small businesses. But let's turn to our guest, Trey Bowles, now, who is a serial entrepreneur who is watching many of his businesses and helping many of his own ventures navigate all of this. And he's also reaching out to other small business owners. Trey, it's good to have you here because I know so many small business owners are dealing with a lack of funding, and that first round of funding for small businesses ran out. This second round of funding is that much more important.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for these businesses to recognize there are lots of places to get this funding. There's not just one location. And so you have to be resourceful as you're out there looking for that. But the key is to not just focus on the funding, but focus on how you survive as a business.
Now, we've heard too many stories of small businesses, for reasons they don't even understand, not getting the funding, while other small businesses that are more toward the higher end of what defines a small business, that's employees of 500 or less, get the funding, and that has ruffled some feathers. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you stand on that whole issue?
Well, I think that it doesn't mean that the companies that have higher revenue don't deserve funding. What it means is we really have to focus our initiatives and efforts around getting the word out to the entrepreneurs that sort of fall through the gaps or the cracks that exist around either A, not knowing that these sorts of funding solutions exist, or B, helping them step by step walk through knowing how to respond and increase the likelihood of getting that funding.
All right, so let's talk about a couple of things here, because you're the founder of the Dallas Entrepreneur Center. On a regular, any given day, you're helping small business owners overcome hurdles and obstacles and challenges that exist. This has to be putting you and your efforts in that arena to the test, because now everyone's experiencing a slowdown.
Yeah, our mission is to help entrepreneurs start, build, and grow businesses. And I tell our team all the time, that's never been more important than it is right now today. And if we're going to fulfill our mission, we've got to respond to the needs of these communities. We have to focus on how we help and streamline opportunities and get them to the small businesses and entrepreneurs that need them, and really, really help make a difference in helping them not only survive, but thrive through the end of this COVID pandemic.
All right, so let's run down. You have 5 tips, and these are good talking points from which to have a discussion. You've already said this one. Apply to many funding opportunities. Don't limit yourself. In a way, it's like college students applying for scholarships. You want to make sure that you apply to as many places as possible. One organization may say no to your application. Another may say yes. Follow each checklist. What do you mean by that?
So most of these funding opportunities are associated with a checklist of all the different sort of documents and information that you're going to need in order to apply. So it's important to go out and look and try to understand what are the requirements of each funding opportunity, and do you fit that? And if you don't fit that, if you don't have those documents, it may not be the best funding alternative for you.
We've said this before on another episode. It bears repeating. And that is this idea that if there's X number of dollars available that aren't really going to help you prop up your business, it's not worth your time to apply for that. Spend your time wisely.
Exactly.
Right? Because you don't want to spend 40 hours and end up only getting $1,000. So some organizations or banks are funding more from this particular fund. Pick a bank or funding partner with an existing relationship. That seems on the surface to be self-explanatory, but it may be lost for whatever reason in the noise of all of this, or in the panic of all of this, that if you've already worked closely with a bank or a lender, they're likely to work with you this time around?
Well, I think that it's important to say that most banks out there that are having access to supporting these funds want to help you. It's not that any of them don't want to help you. It's just that larger banks and institutions have a lot more clients. And so a personal relationship may not just be with 5 or 10 people, and maybe with hundreds of people. And so figuring out, do you have a personal relationship with a banker right now? And if you don't, look at some of the other institutions that may be smaller, local, regional banks, CDFIs, like the one that Isaac works for, and figure out how you can get yourself the highest probability of being successful in getting that funding.
Before we turn to Isaac, let's talk about this. Don't rely solely on funding to save your business. Is that not the first thing, though, someone's thinking about is, I have a payroll to fund, I have a lease payment to make. In most cases, small businesses do if they don't own the property. Then they might have a mortgage. So if you're not relying solely on funding, what else are you relying on?
So this is what I think is important, especially as a small business or early stage entrepreneur, is you're constantly faced with this world of roller coaster activity. One day's big, one day's down. This is an obstacle like anything else. It's a big obstacle. I'm not diminishing the fact that some people will not have enough money to make it out of this, but you have to address this is exactly what it is it's an obstacle that's standing in the way of you continuing your business. And in order for you to move forward, you have to address it head on, come up with a plan, and move forward. Hopefully that involves getting funding if you need it, but there's other ways to survive than just throwing up your hands and saying, I didn't get access to the PPP, I can't move forward.
Can you give me an example of either a business that you've mentored or guided, or one of your own businesses that in the midst of this has relied part on funding and part on ingenuity and made a shift, and you're doing okay?
Well, so I have several businesses that I'm involved with, some of which have had access to and gotten funding from the PPP.
And some have not.
And some have not. And the reality was I addressed that problem from the get-go with a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And more importantly, I focused it on how do I exist and thrive past this pandemic or crisis if there is no funding for me. And that involves doing a lot of things, making a lot of decisions that put you on survival, but get you through.
Yeah, and we don't know how long
We don't.
survival mode will last, or when we might have to make other critical decisions. Let's bring in Isaac Elizondo from the LiftFund. He's the Vice President of the North Texas region to talk more about this. And Isaac, that may be one of the questions that a business owner watching this has, and that is, why is it my neighbor in the strip mall where my business is got funding, but I didn't?
Yes, that's a great question. And of course, we're getting that question a lot these days. So, it really has to do with being ready, being prepared. And when I say that, please, I'm talking about just the basic information or documents that your company would require, such as a DBA, an LLC, the formation of your business. How about just tax returns? 2 years of tax returns. You know what? We asked for 2, bring 3. We're accepting 2018 as well. So also, please, simple utility bills, basic things that just show your business is in existence, and to show that you exist. And so again, just being ready at that time and when you're applying. So that's really, really important.
The Payroll Protection Program, those are the federal funds. You have the Small Business Administration, which is in existence now and helps small businesses in a number of ways. Banks, of course, conventional lending, and then LiftFund. So explain to me at LiftFund how you're being funded during this period of time and how many funds you're giving out. And in the meantime, we've put up your website here, dfw.liftfund.com.
Well, we actually, again, we are a community development financial institution. Obviously, we do not have deposits like banks, but we actually work in partnership with banks. And we help them out with CRA credit, et cetera. I don't want to go into that. But again, we work very closely with banks. They actually fund us through donations or grants. And again, like I said, we help them out with Community Reinvestment Act credit. So that's another way. Huge partners such as Goldman Sachs, who's actually funding us as well to provide the PPP loans. And again, we're always in talks with banks to actually fund the community. So that's actually how we operate.
So if you're helping people who are having difficulty during normal business, when we're having a boom economy and there's no COVID-19 and they're struggling, now you have more people than ever, even successful business owners who are finding themselves in hard times, turn to you for help. That has to be putting a strain on you. It's not unlike the food bank, which is seeing people visit them who've never been food insecure before.
Yes, absolutely. This is unprecedented. Really, it is just something that we have never seen before. We are used to just going into communities. Again, opportunity zones is kind of our focus, but we loan to all. Everyone is welcome. And you're right. There are people that actually apply to us where we say, hey, I think you should be at a bank. You shouldn't be here with LiftFund. And we work that way as well. But absolutely, we're seeing everyone. Doesn't matter where you're at as a business owner. We're seeing all applications, and you are right. We're actually pretty much at capacity at this point in time, and we're seeing a lot of applications. And of course, if you visit our website, there's a form of interest where you can sign up, and so we're that list is growing. So there is a high demand, and definitely, obviously, the need. So
now let me ask you, we promised people we'd help them get the yes, and it's contingent on that application being spot on. So give us a sense, if you can, a few ideas and tips of where people can go wrong and how they can write correct to make sure that their application stands out and they get approved, whether they're applying to you, the Small Business Administration, the PPP, or to a bank.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of details as far as what's on that list, but again, when you go to an SBA website or our website, we have that list. Please be ready with that. And again, it's anything from as simple as a utility bill to actually insurance. That's another thing. I mean, there's a possibility that your insurance coverage actually, some people don't know that you're paying for this. And the insurance can cover something so basic as this. But again, you just need to be prepared and ready with all of your documents, everything. So I just can't reiterate that as much.
That's good advice for any small business owner at any time, I would think, moving forward. Thank you so much, Isaac, for joining us. Isaac Elizondo, Vice President of the North Texas region of the LiftFund, as he said, overwhelmed with applications from people. And something to note here as we continue our conversation with Trey Bowles, small businesses that may be thriving may not have everything in order at a time of crisis. I would think this has been an eye-opening situation for some small businesses to say, I'm going to be more organized moving forward. Should I find myself in crisis mode, I can gather everything I need at the ready.
Right. I think it's a lesson that you wish you wouldn't have to have learned at this time, but a lesson nonetheless. And so I think that goes back to the checklist important piece, right? As he mentioned, you can find it on his website. You can find it on the Let's Start North Texas Business.com website. There are a lot of different places you can go, but the key is utilize your relationships, utilize the people around you, make sure you're getting the information that you need, and make sure that that's all ready to go. So once you sign up, somebody calls you, you can press send and have that document ready to move forward.
At this point, are you able to assess in any way or quantify how many small businesses at this point, having been shuttered for this long, may not be back in business? And what does that mean in terms of our economy? Because if I own a strip mall and I'm a commercial owner of business and I rent out those spaces and all of a sudden 30% of my tenants are gone, and we're in a recession, it's going to be harder to fill that 30% of space. Where are we going to be at, do you think, in terms of our small business economy?
Well, 90% of businesses fail within the first 2 years. So the businesses that have recently just started and are trying to get out of the starting blocks are going to struggle anyway. But I would look at this just like I'd look at unemployment. I mean, there are a lot of small businesses that are hanging on by a thread. They're almost living paycheck to paycheck, and they live great lives like that. And everything has worked for 20, 30, 40 years.
This is a wake-up call.
When something comes like this, you can't help it. It's not your fault.
No, it's unprecedented. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
Right.
We've never experienced anything like this before. Gillian Breidenbach is the VP of Community and Civic Engagement for the Dallas Morning News and heads up Forward DFW, and she's joining us here from our producer pod. And a question, Gillian?
Well, the question really is, I think there's an onus on us as North Texans is that once we get these businesses funded, it's going to be our responsibility to shop local. So think about a small business, if you can't name all your employees, that's not a small business. So if we're going to go to all this effort to support our small businesses, as soon as we open safely, we need to get out there and support these men and women in these strip malls and these businesses all across North Texas. It's really important that we bring our economy back so they can do all the work, but we've got to go out there and support them and show that we want small business to come back.
Well, 70% of our economy is consumer spending. And that's also, obviously, with the exception of some of the large big box retailers that are providing delivery service for essentials for the most part in grocery stores, the economy's shut down.
It's going to take a while for us to climb out of this. I don't think people realize the extent of the state of emergency that we're in for small businesses. And what we don't realize when we think about small businesses is these businesses have employees, these employees have families. If we let these businesses go out of business, it's affecting a lot of people. It's devastating. And so I agree with Gillian wholeheartedly. Not only do we need to support them as we come out of this crisis, we need to support the companies that we can today.
Yeah, as best we can. And they need to know how they can continue to stay in business and provide services when it's not conventional, when their doors aren't open, which is something we intend to address here on this series with Trey's help. Trey, thank you so much. We want to give you some other resources that you can turn to. Let's grow NorthTexasBusiness.com. That is Trey's effort with the Dallas Entrepreneur Center, or DEC. He's helping you there. LiftFund, let's not forget about them, and our thanks to Isaac Elizondo for that. That's dfw.liftfund.com. And we're moving small business forward with Forward DFW, that website, dallasnews.com/FWD DFW. And our thanks to them for helping small business, and our series here will continue. I'm Ron Corning. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Special thanks to Forward DFW's founding and supporting partners for making this coverage possible. Forward DFW was created in partnership with the Dallas Morning News. The goal? To connect companies, causes, and the community, and face issues that impact the economy and wellness of North Texas.